On balance, how trusted would you say the mining and the exploration sector actually is?
Well, sadly, the legacy of the mining industry, combined with a bit of a failure of communication over the last 20 years, let's be honest, means that we're still living in an untrusted way. And I think it was GlobalScan who came out with statistics earlier this year, which ICMM highlighted, in the fact that the mining industry has lost trust completely, which is terribly sad because I think there's been an awful lot of good done over the last 20 years. The legacy of the 1900s and before have largely been put to right. But in the modern day, of course, expectations of society are moving stronger and stronger and stronger and requiring greater and greater, attention, which is combined with global warming or whatever other social issues that are going on, means that all of this needs to come down and be almost accelerated even further. So we have lost trust in the sector. But that's not to say we can't reverse that trust, particularly given 20 years of work, which has already started and is behind us. And in many, many ways, this sector has shown and led from admittedly a very low bottom, but has shown leadership in a lot of these areas. What is great, and particularly with the thought of looking into the future with regards to responsible mining, is we've now got an ability to codify and communicate all of these different things which largely the sector have been embracing to some degree or another over the last 20 years. That, to me, is the linchpin with which we can actually begin to raise confidence and trust in the sector.
So do you feel that there's a new model for mining that really focuses in on the development, for example, that can be unlocked by saying, okay, well, we need these minerals and metals that have formed naturally within the crust of the earth. If we go about extracting them in a responsible manner, then actually the benefit that they could deliver to society and perhaps even the environment in the long term as well, that's the prize that we're looking at, not just perhaps that short-term cash that could be made from selling copper or whatever it is that we're digging out of the ground.
I remember, I think it was Andy Purvis of the Natural History Museum who, and apologies if I got his name wrong, and probably had a doctor in front of his name. He highlighted the importance of now being able to work with nature positive at mine sites. So, of course, we've got to accept that we dig holes in the ground, but the ability within the entire landscape of a mine's footprint means that we can actually address a lot of these issues and have a beneficial impact while mitigating the negatives within the immediate footprint of a mine. The other thing to bear in mind on this is governments, which, let's go back to Paris Accord, where it was a resounding success from bringing governments together, which doesn't always happen. Governments are completely embracing the idea of responsibility, not just in mining, in terms of all sectors. And the ability for governments to act takes time. Laws take time to take place. So if we take permitting as an example, the impact of a change such as the Paris Accord, which has then led on to other agreements since then, is only beginning to take shape out now. And then I was talking to one of our customers earlier today about a recent trip they had out to Chile, and they highlighted you cannot now get permitted unless you can demonstrate the aspirations of sustainability or responsibility going forward. And I hope what's coming across here, at least what has come across to me and all of these discussions, is ESG is a word which people don't quite grab because it's a compliance thing and it's been politicized, it's done this and that and everything else. But the benefits of ESG is that codification. And if we can effectively use that in a trusted way to communicate more effectively to the different stakeholder groups, incorporating permitting, then we've got a really exciting future to go forward. And the implications of that, from my point of view, are that from finance is ahead of the curve. You know, when the Paris Accord happened, finance turned around. They embraced it. And look at the impact that has had. You might agree or disagree with it, but look at the impact that has had. The youth of these banks and the asset managers, who are the new customers who are going to inherit $20 to $30 trillion over the course of the next 10 or 20 years, whatever it is, they, on all surveys, want to see sustainability incorporated within their investment. So if these banks were able to change effectively on a dime and to integrate sustainability, which is much wider than global warming. This is arguably not even to do with global warming. It might have been an encouragement of it, but it's the responsibility of all these other parts which mining sector is so involved with at every single level. If we can effectively integrate that within the asset management world with which they have, and also debt and everything else, which actually had it much earlier anyway, then we can begin to see the additional impact coming on with regards to permitting and governments. And governments want to do critical minerals. That is the new oil of the world. So if they want to get on board with critical minerals, and they say, because of the pressure from society, that they need to ensure that their communities are coming along that journey with them, you need to get the buy-in from those communities. Otherwise, those electorates are going to have problems. So that's really where I think it's so exciting to be able to look to the future and see that products are going to be more highly valued in terms of the mining products in 4 or 5 years' time. We're already seeing differentiation of capital in terms of where that's going with the OEMs and the automakers. We're already seeing a change of the cost of capital. It's not fast enough, but we are seeing that change.
So in terms of that change in the cost of capital and seeing the world of finance move to incorporate more aspects of responsibility within how they allocate that finance, monitor that finance, can you just expand on that a little bit, Jamie?
Well, I think one of the problems is with the world of ESG is it's grown up in a fairly incredible speed, which has, I think, resulted in it not being perfect. And as a result of that, having lots of detractors for it, and quite understandably. If you look at what I'm going to get the acronym wrong, the ACCC have just said, which is the Australian Consumer Association, and they've come out and said, I think it's 51% of all companies that they have monitored have been at risk of greenwashing. And if you look down their list of 10 points they've made, which related, I mean, it wasn't specifically focused on the mining industry, but it related to so many things that we can address through the positive impact of either ESG, sustainability, or whatever. And the benefits, if we can get this right, to improve valuation, encourage M&A, reduce cost of capital, and all of that, to me is a breath of fresh air for this industry, which has suffered so much.
Yeah, so I totally agree with you on that. And also especially looking at sustainability or responsibility, not just at those threats that need to be managed up to a certain line, but also unlocking the opportunities that come with it as well. And something that breaks my heart is when people think that ESG is just a tick box, that it's just greenwashing, that it's about gaining access to capital that otherwise you might not be able to get that's there. But as soon as somebody starts speaking about that, I think, okay, that's an interesting perception of what ESG is, but that isn't what ESG or responsibility means for me. What do you think there?
I think we're on a journey, and I think we have to recognise, probably because of the evolution from zero to where we are today, is that it's not perfect. But I think when people begin to unwrap this and see that if we can demonstrate responsibility through these measures and through these credentials, then and do it on a way that can bring show aspiration of an executive board or a board of directors to the future as to where they're going, where that asset, where that exploration or development project is going to sit, and where that effectively is going to be once it gets into production. Where does it sit on the GHG emissions curve? Where does it sit with regards to its water? How is it engaged with its local community? Where does it sit with regards to government and maybe additional permitting, which might be impacted by sustainability? Those that are good will get more permitting rights than maybe those that have shown deference. And to me, there's a value add change, which at the moment I fear there is, probably because of the more generic discussion of ESG at large, it's considered a tick box, it's considered a compliance process, it's considered a cost, it's considered, frankly, as a pain in the neck, where I think we have not yet explored, and in some cases not had the opportunity to explore or demonstrate the true value add benefits that are going to come, particularly for this industry, which has so much to gain with regards to demonstrating responsibility.
Now, when you say industry, and of course demonstrating responsibility, many of the standards, the guidelines, etc. out there have been designed with a hole in the ground in mind. So they're designed with the operator in mind. But of course, many of the companies that work within the mining sector sit further upstream. They sit in exploration, and so have slightly different needs, slightly different opportunities perhaps that are on the table with regards to responsibility. When somebody comes to you and says, oh no, we're too early for ESG, other than, for me, it's quite frustrating when somebody says that, but also it means, okay, no, this is opportunity to have a good conversation. What does it make you feel, and what's your standard answer?
I'm not going to give you a standard answer. I'm going to give you I had a fascinating conversation with a senior person within one of the majors yesterday. And that person we got off topic. She was based in Perth, and she's involved in the sustainability department. And we got off topic, and it highlighted what she basically said is, we have the biggest risk for this industry is the thousands of mine sites that are out there. Mine sites being projects, or they don't have to be operating, they could be exploration. If you look at the number of sites with which developers or producers have, relative to the number of sites that are developers or exploration, the producers are tiny. So therefore, where's the biggest risk, but also the greatest opportunity for changing communities' affection to the mining industry around, and therefore moving it into a positive? So sure, we should not be disclosing at an exploration level to the same degree as a producer. It would be ludicrous, notwithstanding the fact that most of the global standards out there require you to do that. We need to make it right size. We need to make it appropriate. We need to, and through doing that appropriateness, then to ensure that the output from that can be used by a board of directors or by a management team, or frankly by people, geologists and everything in the field, to be able to say, okay, this is where we need to direct the company or move along, so that looking 4 or 5 years out, when we got a mine in production, then we know we're going to have the best credentials to get the best valuation, to get the lowest cost of capital, and ultimately to have a product that people are going to want to have going through their refiner or smelter.
So with that, it needs to be right-sized, and I guess if we focus in on those geologists, who they typically are working within exploration, I think that very few people go to study geology because they don't like the planet and they want to harm it. I mean, the reason why somebody studies geosciences is because they're fascinated by the planet. And my impression is that most geoscientists are very interested in not just the rocks, but also the environment, the community round about them as well, yet they might not have the explicit skill set in that whole forest of ESG standards. So is it a case of saying, let's boil those standards down and say, well, what are the key principles that we need to adhere to, and then build on that to help direct those organisations so that they deliver on responsibility?
Yeah, so people inside mining companies, and this could be a geologist, a smallest rock chip sampling exploration company, all the way through to consultants advising bigger companies. We as an industry, if we can help them understand what responsible mining can define and what that can mean, and we can give them that information to understand it as a kind of free book, or as a kind of guide, which effectively is what the Digbee frameworks were designed to do, then we're a long way down the track of helping every single company in this sector. Whether or not they use us or not, it actually doesn't matter to that extent if we're going to get a higher valuation by the greater good adopting the frameworks and doing it themselves. Doesn't help me on a commercial basis, but I think the important thing here is, first step is know what you're dealing with in terms of the full spectrum of 30 odd different topics which fit into responsible mining or responsible development, and then from there take that one step further and say, right, now how can we use that, gain credibility, grow trust and confidence in this through an independent assessment? And that's where I hope that we can help the industry go from really a lack of trust and poor value. I mean, the worst valuation. I mean, let's not argue over it. It's a current disaster at the moment, and we're not going to get the critical minerals for 2030 to 2050. Before that's irrelevant because none of the new mines can be built in that time. But we're not going to get the critical minerals we need unless we can lower the cost of capital, unless we can bring communities on side, unless governments can feel comfortable that their electorate are going to support them as a result of the investment and the support that goes into those communities through responsible mining.
So just to round off, in your opinion, responsibility within mining, is this still a massive opportunity, or is it a reality that's here and now that perhaps the world just doesn't know about yet?
Well, it's most definitely an opportunity. I mean, this is let me put my hat on of finance over the last 30 years. Yeah, you are looking at an industry that has got to double or triple in order to meet the critical minerals of the world of the future. You've got a sector that is as poorly trusted as can get, yet 20 years of experience of improving its feet on the ground and its operations and its processes and its environment and everything that comes up, diversity, everything has improved. Virtually everything has improved over the last 20 years. So we're not starting from zero and we've got to wait a generation to see the benefits of this. We can see the benefits of it over the next few years as a result of codifying, improving and raising confidence in the operations at exploration level all the way through up to make sure that these products are regarded as something that we do want to buy and we do want to ultimately support in a responsible way and mitigating risk wherever possible.
Brilliant. With that, thank you very much, Jamie.
Thank you very much, Sarah.